Hey guys, welcome to the Liberal Hive Mind, a channel solely focused on exposing the abundant hypocrisy of the left. Well, I definitely don't say that every single video, but every now and then I just have to. Folks, they did it again. Always so perfectly timed, huh? All of a sudden, as it seems as though Democrats' plan to remove Donald Trump from the ballot in Colorado is failing, another corrupt, rogue Democrat steps in to protect democracy from Donald Trump. Folks, the Democrats are completely out of line on this one as usual. The Secretary of State from Maine deciding to take it upon herself to remove Donald Trump from the Maine ballot. Here we go again with these anti-democratic goons. You know, usually I'll make a video covering the political backfire, but in today's case we're going straight to the backfire because this is one of the most ridiculous things I think I've ever seen. We got some stuff to get into, so let's roll the tape. Alright folks, so this is Maine's Secretary of State, a Democrat politician by the name of Shenna Bellows. Well, Shenna decided to take it upon herself to remove Donald Trump from the ballot. Probably something to do with defending democracy, I think, as her shirt implies here on the first photo. Here's Mrs. Shenna Bellows telling CNN exactly why she did what she did.
Again, I am so mindful, and I said this in my decision, that it is unprecedented. No Secretary of State has ever deprived a presidential candidate of ballot access based on Section 3 of the 14th Amendment. But no presidential candidate has ever engaged in insurrection and been disqualified under Section 3 of the 14th Amendment.
Now, first off, I have to apologize for playing that clip for you guys. You know, the Valley Girls speak is pretty hard to handle. I don't know what to say other than it's just the continued trend. This is Democrats, folks. This is Democrats in the modern age. They love going on and on about democracy. You know, they love going on and on about the rule of law, but they're the biggest hypocrites on the frickin' planet. Section 3 of the 14th Amendment has never been used before because no presidential candidate has ever engaged in insurrection. How can you be a Secretary of State, say something so blatantly incorrect related to the Constitution and just law in general? Donald Trump was never found guilty of insurrection. He never engaged in insurrection. That is your opinion, Mrs. Shannon Bellow. And so she decided, based on her own opinion, to just do the damn thing. Just remove him from the ballot. Why? Because democracy defenders, or I don't know, some nonsense like that. Democracy, folks. The Democrat definition of democracy is spreading fake news and just deciding that people are guilty and removing them off the ballot because they'd rather not participate in democracy. They'd rather just, you know, take the government. What a bunch of monumental fools. But of course, this isn't happening without reason. It's not coming out of nowhere. The whole thing's been a concerted effort. Actually, here's a clip that surfaced with Mrs. Shenna Bellows essentially telling us the quiet part out loud.
And Secretary Bellows, would love to hear about your thoughts on the biggest threats facing our democracy at this point in time.
Well, what Secretary Griswold just said and named is something that was unimaginable 2 years ago or 10 years ago, and that is election sabotage. It is a crystal clear example of what's happening all across the country. So we need to organize to make sure we have better leaders in positions of power to fight back against that. Secretary Benson talked about voter suppression, and that's something that when we started our careers at the ACLU and Southern Poverty Law Center, fighting back about systematic, structural voter oppression, targeting specifically Black and brown voters. It's rooted in white supremacy. That is something we have to continue to do work on. And Secretary Merrill talked about the For the People Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. We must have federal standards all across the country.
So the ACLU and the SPLC have been working behind the scenes to disqualify Donald Trump and remove him from the ballot. I mean, wow, just amazing. You know what that screams to me? Democracy defenders. These people have their heads so far up their own behinds. They are such little corrupt, power-hungry gremlins, it's not even funny. They will stop at nothing. They're obviously so in the wrong here that even their own leftist, corrupt, fake news peddling colleagues are calling them out. Here's CNN's Dana Bash calling the Maine ruling against Trump a recipe for constitutional chaos.
Is Donald Trump eligible to be president again? That's the legal question facing this country after Maine became the second state to say he's not because of the 14th Amendment's ban on insurrectionists holding federal office. It is a recipe for constitutional chaos that the Supreme Court will almost surely have to solve.
Not exactly sure why Mediaite is reporting it as a Maine ruling when it was literally just a Secretary of State who decided that she was just going to remove Trump from the ballot. But what do you expect from Dan Abrams' Mediaite? I know I use them as a source all the time, but they're absolutely frickin' horrible. Here's also CNN's Eli Honig clearing the record.
Counselor, I just want to start with you. Again, it was an interesting discussion, an interesting take from the Maine Secretary of State here. The 14th Amendment, Section 3, says in plain text that if you shall have engaged in insurrection, you can't be in office. She takes that to mean that if she determines that Donald Trump engaged in insurrection, he can't be on the Maine primary ballot. Is it that simple?
No, it's not that simple. So clearly, Section 3 of the 14th Amendment says, engage in insurrection, you're out. We all have that. The complicated part, and where we are going to see this play out in the courts, is who gets to decide and by what process. Now, it's important to note, and in the ruling, the Secretary of State we just heard from says she's basically following the same legal reasoning as the Colorado Supreme Court did last week. And she says in her ruling, if this gets struck down in Colorado, we're out of luck, too. So she's basing it on the same legal argument. Let me sort of lay out the arguments both sides. And by the way, it's worth saying, we're all theorizing here. We're in legally unknown territory. The argument against is, first of all, the 14th Amendment, Section 5, says Congress has the authority to pass laws to implement this. They did. They passed the criminal law. And the argument is that means Congress, not the states. But perhaps, and this is the argument that the Maine Secretary of State in Colorado made, the states can do it, too. If that's true, then Section 2, Question 2, is were the processes, were these hearings fair? Did they comport with due process? And I think there's a question there with regard to what Maine did. Because if you look at the hearing, and she details this in the ruling, they heard from one fact witness, a law professor. She based her ruling on a lot of documents, but also YouTube clips, news reports, things that would never pass the bar in normal court. She's not a lawyer, by the way. It's a smartly written decision, clearly consulted with lawyers, but this is an unelected. She's chosen by the state legislature.
She's elected by the state legislature.
Elected by the legislature, but not democratically elected. Not a knock. That's just the way it's set up in Maine. And this hearing, look, it doesn't have to be a criminal trial. We don't have to have all the protections. But I think the argument you'll hear from opponents is, one, not up to the states to do this. This is why we have all different decisions from all different states. And two, the procedures were not up to snuff.
Here's Maine Senator Angus King coming out against the removal of Trump from the ballot. I really hope people are paying attention to this, folks. This is what it means to be a Democrat. To put party politics, to put personal politics, to put the anti-Trump vendetta and agenda above all, above democracy even, while claiming to be defending democracy. You know, the timing on this tells the whole story. Shanna Bellows isn't doing this because it's the right thing to do or even the legal thing to do. She's only doing it because of the activist groups applying political pressure on her to do it. And probably most importantly from her perspective, put herself in the spotlight, just like Letitia James, you know, it's the same kind of thing. She's taking on Donald Trump, the insurrectionist, and single-handedly saving democracy. You know, Democrats on Twitter love this stuff. They're all cheering her on. It's obviously a name recognition ploy. I wouldn't be surprised if all of a sudden we start seeing Shanna Bellows' name all over the place, doing media interviews, and possibly one day ending up in the U.S. Senate or as an analyst on MSNBC, and she gives it away. I mean, it's obvious. As Fox News pointed out quite accurately, I might add, she doesn't stop saying I.
Will carry down to the other courts, but the Democrats will keep doing this. She puts it right to the state Supreme Court. Why? She knows it's garbage. I mean, just call it what it is.
I can answer that question. It's arrogant, and it's hers. If you look at the statement, Julie, that she put out there when she filed this motion and she's defending her decision, she says, I conclude that Mr. Trump used a false narrative of election fraud. I likewise conclude that Mr. Trump was aware of the likelihood for violence and at least initially supported its use. I mean, this is all about her. I mean, it's Maine. She's out of her league. She's out of her lane. It's definitely going to the Supreme Court. They're going to strike this down. There's no way they can't legally.
Me. I. Yeah, we get it. You think that Donald Trump engaged in insurrection, so you thought it would be a good idea to simply remove him from the ballot. But what about everybody else? Well, when you're a narcissistic, corrupt Democrat sociopath, nobody else really matters. I guess democracy now is just letting middle-aged white women who speak like 14-year-old valley girls with the vocal fry and the uptalk and everything, let's just let them decide who gets to run and who gets to be president based on their feelings. What an absolute joke. I hope people are paying attention. And more importantly, I hope that Democrats are paying attention. Lifelong Democrat voters, is this what you want to be associated with? A party that abuses power, a party that abuses their positions in government? Literally everything that they accuse Donald Trump of doing, all the fear-mongering, everything they told you that Donald Trump was gonna do, they're of course the ones doing it themselves. I mean, horrible decision from a self-interested, selfish Democrat politician. This decision obviously is gonna get reversed. The Supreme Court is gonna BTFO all of these rogue Democrat states, and I can't wait to see them take that big fat L, and hopefully it wakes up millions of voters. Just awful. That's what I got for you guys though. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, make sure to leave a like and possibly subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.